We're going to share. Okay, so today we're going to start with chapter 8, designing classes. If I were you, chapter 8, 9, and 12 would be my whole life for next few weeks. You need to understand these chapters very well if you want to know object-oriented design. So we went over some classes in chapter 2 and 3. Now we're going to go deeper of how we're going to design these things. Pardon me? Did somebody had a question? Okay, so what we're going to do in this chapter is how we going to choose appropriate classes for the specific problem. So we're going to go through certain algorithm. I show you how those algorithm is done. So when you want to design your class, you can have some kind of a idea or algorithm. If it's like this, you can do it this way. If it's like this, you're going to do it that way. We can understand the concept of the cohesion, and that's where we're going to spend some time in our design to be sure our classes are done correctly. We're going to be also working on minimizing the dependency and side effects. And we're going to be looking at how to find the data representation of a class. We're going to be talking about static methods and packages toward the end. I put the packages for your learning team assignment. So you're going to be doing packages for this. I am not too concerned about packages for this class, this course, but we're going to do it at least one time so you know how is it done. Some IDEs create packages for you already, so some of you already have it and some it doesn't, but it's good to know how the packages work and what does it do, and eventually you can create your own packages. And we're going to be talking about the unit testing again with the frameworks on it. All right. So let's start with classes. When we talk about the class, we are talking about a single concept. So one single concept, we're going to create, we're going to be thinking about a class. So that can be like a mathematical concept, a point, a rectangular, ellipse, or a real life concept like bank account, cash register, things in that matter. Nida, you have your microphone on. Can you turn it off, please? So we can think about the actors that they have ER or OR at the end. So we can think about it like that. So when we create an object or we are looking at that object, then we can name them better. So if I have an object called random versus an object that's called random number generator, so you can see the generator part of it, that's going to be called as, it's going to be more familiar to be an object. So Java does tend to write more than C++. So if you're coming from C++, you might complain. I did complain, I still complain. That is a lot more typing, but it's going to have more meaningful concepts in there. So that's what we are talking about. We have some utility classes. You have seen it. These utility classes, we do not create an object for it. We just use them as they are. So remember, for every class that you have to create an object for it to use it. The one that you really don't see the word new in front of it is a string, that when you create an object of a string, it happens behind the scene. You don't see that, but other than that, you're always going to have that word new to create an object to use. But the static ones, You don't do that. You don't create the object. You just use the methods that's available to you. So we saw the math as a utility class. We have some thing called program starter. So we have been playing with those things. So that would have a main in it. So we're going to have multiple classes, and then we're going to have one class with a main in it. So each class is going to have its own concept, so I can have more than one class. We talked about the testing those classes. So I might create some testers with main to just test one of my classes. And then I would have the main for my whole program that's going to be handling the starting and finishing up the things that we do. Now, my main is going to create object of my classes. Remember, you need to create an object before you use your class. It also handles your input and output. So one of the things that I want to emphasize, even though we do something sometimes in here, generally you want to take your input and output out of your class. We do not print anything inside the class. The reason for that is we don't know where we're going to use the object of this class. So I might use it in a GUI. I might use it in doing reading and writing to a file. I might use it to read and write to a database. So reading and writing should not be the concern of my class. It's going to be a concern of some other things. Maybe the main would be a good place for it to do it. So I can take my class. Remember, the idea of the object-oriented design is anybody can use my class and put it in anywhere and it's going to work. So we're going to be thinking that way, that the classes are going to be for reusable code and we can insert it in any place and it's going to work. It shouldn't have any dependency to my project. My classes are going to be independent. Another thing that we're going to be focusing on is going to be that the class name should indicate what object of class will do. So when we're naming the class, when we're creating our own class and we're going to name it, it should, when I look at the name, I should be able to say, okay, what is this class is doing? So paycheck program, some of you might think about it as my program, but I'm focusing on class and I'm not going to call it paycheck class. I'm just going to call it paycheck. So paycheck is generally a class that's going to handle the paycheck. This is something important, especially you're coming from CS2. We have to work on this. We have to practice on this, that a single operation or action is not a class. So a single operation example would be, for example, compute paycheck. The computation or the compute is not a class, is just an action and is part of a paycheck class. And we're going to be practicing, especially if you're coming from CS2, to get that concept going. Okay, so I have two self-check that should wake you up or warm you up, however you want to look at it. So I have it in activity somewhere in here. Okay, so I have it as activity 6.2, and I'm going to put you guys in a group of 2. There is only. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the methods. So the methods are the action that happens in our classes. So a class should represent one single concept. You're going to hear me say this again and again and again. So when we are looking at a class, it's only going to have one single concept. So it doesn't have multiple concepts in it. Now, how do we communicate with outside world? How does the class communicate with outside world? That is called public interface. So that's the way it communicates with outside world. My house has a door, front door, that is going to interface with outside world. So anybody want to come to my house, they have to come through my front door. Anybody want to talk to me, they have to come through the front door. So the public interface is how we're going to be communicating with outside world. Now, when we're talking about cohesive, that means everything that I have in my method is going to be directly connected to my class. So I cannot say my public interface is my neighbor's door. It has to be connected to my own class. And you'll be surprised at how many times we do that. And especially if we don't do design very well, we start thinking about the program, and then we say, oh, I need this, I need that, I need that. Then we start creating method that doesn't belong to my class. So we got to be careful about that, that all the methods are going to be directly connected to our concept of our class. So we can talk about the common goal that everybody is going to have the same goal, and that's what we're talking about. Now, we are looking at this. We have receive a payment, and we have a cash register, and then we how many concepts do we have here in this one? Are they all in one concept, or they are different concepts?
I think they're all different.
Okay, what are the differences?
So the first class is like a cash register, and it holds the values of like the coins, and then the other one is like receiving the money. So just completely different from what the first one's doing.
So are you saying that the cash register job is not to receive the money?
I mean, I treat it as like a separate thing, because one is just like values of what could be inside the cash register, if that makes sense.
So you're talking about the balance of your cash register.
Yeah.
So if I have a balance in my cash register, my receiving payment is going to be changing my balance. So they are still talking about the same concept. I'm talking about balance, receiving money, and those kind of things. So the thing that doesn't belong to my cash register is actually the coin. If we're talking about the concept of the coin is not part of the cash register. So my cash register, even though we're talking about the coin, is not the coin is not the cash register. Cash register is not a coin. They are not the same thing. So we have a cash register that's going to hold coins, compute the total, but the value of individual coins is a separate concept. So we have two concepts. We have a concept of the coin. And remember, just because the value of the coin is different doesn't mean it's a different class, it's a different object. So my coin is going to have we can have a value for it, and we can have a name for it. So, and we can have our get value and the constructors and all those things. That reminds me, there was a discussion in the question area about the constructors. The constructor does not return any value. The constructor has to be void all the time. So I mentioned that over there. And so if I have 10 different coins, or I have 5 different coins, they not necessarily they are different classes, they have the same concept. So the question is, what do they have in common? The coin have a value and have a name. So the dime has a value of 10, the nickel has the value of 5. That is going to be a different object of the same class. Now, my cash register is going to be holding these things. So that's the way it's going to calculate its balance. Or it's going to do the receive payment. So we have to work on this. Again, if you're coming from CS2, you got to work a little more than my other students. I hope that you guys went through this in your 3A if you're coming from there. So we have to have one concept only. And as we go forward, we're going to understand this a little more. We're going to be working on it. We have something called